Good evening. I am Anatoly Svin. This is Patriots Must Rise. Today I want to talk to you about the countless things that the United States federal government has done to create a division between the government and the people, to the point where the people actually feel like the government is the enemy and has to be the enemy. So let's get into it. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one to figure out or see the difference between what George Bush's FEMA checks were actually worth versus the so-called disaster relief under Kamala Harris and the Joe Biden administration of $750. Because, like I said, Danny Vercher, have you met Danny?
No.
He's got an incredible story. Danny Vercher was decimated by Katrina. His entire family lost 3 houses, and they all basically packed up a camper and went or came to Vancouver, Washington on the expense of the FEMA check. What was left over, he bought a business license and started a Southern-style barbecue restaurant called Daddy D's Southern-style Barbecue. It started out as at a little kiosk on 4th Plain, inside a Shell station. I believe it's on 4th Plain and Andreessen. He's got a little smoker outside, and when I met him, it was this horrific windstorm, and they were trying to set up a little canopy for people to sit and eat and be dry. But the canopy was just blowing over before they could actually set it up. So what ended up happening was they actually concreted in the frame. I don't think the canopy's there anymore, but that was the extent of the restaurant at the time. When he started getting a little bit more busier, he was able to build inside seating and expand the kitchen a little bit. And now he's got, I think, 4, I can't remember what all of them are, restaurants in different locations. Hazeldale, inside the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon. You might have another one in Portland. And another one off of, or further down Highway 99 in Hazeldale. So 2 in Hazeldale, Vancouver, and in Portland, Oregon. But Kamala Harris and the Biden administration, because I will never admit to that woman running the White House when Biden was president.
He's still president.
I'm not even sure he's still alive.
Well, supposedly he is.
Well, where's Jill?
He's been, I don't know, maybe he told her to shut up, sit down, and get out of his way. Who knows?
Maybe.
According to...
I think they killed both of them. What?
According to a bunch of people, he's blowing up Missy's campaign.
Yeah.
He's going to all these public events and stuff when she's supposed to be speaking and this kind of thing, and wearing Trump hats, and there's a whole thing that he's mad and he's trying to blow up her campaign.
Well,
can't exactly blame him.
I don't blame him. That truly was, as Trump says, a coup.
Yeah. It just said he has every...
Kamala Harris wasn't even nominated to run for this presidency.
And there should be a thing that she can't decide the election. That she shouldn't even be able to still be standing as vice president if she's running.
And that is, yeah, exactly. And that is a major conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Because she's the current vice president of the United States.
Yep.
She's the one that would be the final say in who certifies the
to be a thing.
election. And yet she's running for the she's running for the presidency. That should be an automatic disqualifier.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
For the candidacy.
Being as like governor or senator, if they get elected president, they can't still be standing as governor or senator. That's a thing.
Well,
It doesn't even exist, but
when Christy Lake, is that her name?
I don't know.
When I think it's Christy Lake. Christy Lake ran for governor against the Secretary of State of Arizona in 2000, or maybe it was 2002. They had the same issues, because the Secretary of State in Arizona is the one that officiates the votes for who's going to be governor.
Yeah.
Yes, she was still running. This kind of thing needs to stop.
Yeah.
We need to have a checks and balances, as the Democrats are so happy to talk about, that eliminate the corruption on both sides. But we're not seeing it. Because as long as it actually finds favor for the Democrats, the Democrats are happy to do it.
But for example, when Bill was running for president, he was governor. As soon as he got the nomination in November, he stepped down as governor. Before he was even sworn in.
Yeah.
So, I remember that whole thing. They were like, wait a minute, he stepped down as governor? Why? Because it was a conflict of interest. He couldn't stay being governor.
But back then it seemed like it was more understood.
Yeah. I remember that being a headline thing, that he stepped down as governor, and they got into why. And it was just like because of the conflict of interest, same as senator. When Biden supposedly won the election, he couldn't be senator anymore. Wasn't senator anymore. He was vice president. Never mind.
No, Biden actually had no office when he
I know.
ran
I
this
just
time.
changed that. It was when he was running for. He was added on as vice president with Obama.
Yeah. He actually admitted that he had no public office at this moment, and which good. He should have never had a public office in the first place. Okay, so can you look up how much George Bush's FEMA distributed in the FEMA checks for Katrina?
I'll try. What?
How much? How much?
The headline here is FEMA demands Katrina victims pay back assistance money. That was 2011.
That was another thing I was going to talk about, but no, how much was the check?
I know, I'm looking that up.
Okay.
I just didn't know that. Sorry.
But yes, FEMA checks are not a grant. They are a loan to the victims of disasters. It's an absolute joke. We pay our entire lives into this system, and this broken system wants to have the money paid back. The $750 under Kamala Harris, that, by the way, those checks are bouncing for disaster relief for the 2 hurricanes on the East Coast, are also just a loan. You can't get the money, use it, and not expect it to be paid back. It will actually come out of your income tax return. But you find it?
Looking, honey.
Okay. Okay,
Supposedly we're supposed to have comparison for the two, but I can't find it. Hold on.
okay. While she's looking,
Oh, which tours through Florida?
let's get into the idea of the public helping disaster relief victims, or disaster victims. We've had reports of people being arrested for trying to fly around and help get people off of the tops of buildings that are collapsing in this most recent storm system. 2 hurricanes hitting the same area, one after another. These buildings are compromised. They're sitting on the roof. Nobody's coming to help them from the government. So local pilots are getting in their aircraft and doing what they can to help them. They land, they get arrested. Meanwhile, FEMA gives out electric chainsaws to the victims so they can help themselves. But there's no electricity because they're trying to protect the environment. They're not trying to protect the environment with common sense. They're just trying to protect the environment. Keep in mind that these are the same people that also believe that the human race is a form of pollution. Okay? So the people that are legitimately trying to help their brothers and sisters, giving out real chainsaws, you know, the ones with some horsepower, and take gas, and don't have to be charged when there's no electricity, and can be submerged underwater. Yeah, electricity and water, guys. Anybody go to grade school? Apparently Democrats didn't. They get arrested. So we want to think about that just a little bit in this electoral cycle, because these people are idiots. Okay. Okay, I think she's still looking. My phone is dead, so that's actually why I'm not looking.
Yeah, because you didn't have it plugged in all day.
I fell asleep.
Well, I've discussed helping you plug it in.
Okay.
Honey, I'm not getting a straight actual amount. I'm getting how much was sent out in mass.
Okay, how much was set out in mass? Because I think I know what's going on there.
Go back to that article. Seriously, really? Okay. Hurricane funding for Hurricane Katrina, which tore through Florida, causing close to 2,000 fatalities and an estimated $125 billion in damages. In early September, Congress approved $10.5 billion in aid for the survivors without any debt in the House or Senate. Without any debate, I'm sorry. In early September, Congress approved $10.5 billion in aid for the survivors without any debate in the House or Senate. On September 7th, an additional $51.8 billion funding package was passed by both houses.
Okay.
Want more? According to the Library of Congress's Congressional Research Service, a total of $121.7 billion in hurricane relief was allocated for disaster relief following Katrina, as well as the less destructive Hurricane Rita's, Wilma, Gustav, and Ike. Of this, around $53.8 billion worth, around $86.7 billion in 224 terms was appropriated to the Department of Homeland Security, which primarily went through the FEMA-administered Disaster Relief Fund. In addition, around $27 billion went through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with a further $25 billion appropriated to the Department of Defense to undertake engineering and construction activities.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Okay, FEMA, for Hurricane Helene, the storm has, FEMA said that federal assistance provided to survivors has surpassed $137 million, and that it was remaining steadfast in helping communities recover and rebuild. FEMA has deployed personnel and provided supplies for the storm-hit communities, with over 14.9 million meals and 13.9 million liters of water already shipped to the region.
Okay, that's good. That's exactly what I thought. So $27 billion was allocated for the Katrina and the aftermath of other storms in the same year.
53.8 and then 86.7 billion
for housing.
For housing. Oh, okay, whatever.
Unfortunately, we have a bunch of idiots in Congress that seem to think that everything needs to be need-based. So they're not going to publish that. In Donnie Virtue's case, he had 7 kids, a wife, and they probably factored in the value of 3 houses that he actually lost. So the check was probably very substantial. Now, we know for a fact that Kamala Harris only allocated $750 per person that was affected in the hurricanes in 2024. Only allocated. But there's strings attached to this. There was strings attached to the FEMA checks for Katrina too. I'm not really too sure what those strings were, but in this particular case, the $750 is only allocated to repairing your home. Think about that. Repairing your home. You can spend $750 just in repairing drywall in one room. That's not to mention the hardware to cut the drywall, the insulation that needs to be replaced, and all this other stuff. But she only allocated $750. Okay, so we have a Democrat Party that once again is toting the party line that they are the people, the party of the people. The party of the people is only giving out $750 that doesn't even fix a room in a house. Yet the Bush administration, during Katrina, in I believe it was 2004, 2005, literally gave out enough to functionally rebuild entire cities. One family at a time. And we never heard anything about the neighbors that were trying to help getting arrested. Because back then, rural America wasn't considered the enemy of a state. Back then, rural America was actually praised for being heroes for feeding America. So, just something to think about. And I've got more with showing exactly how unhappy Americans are with the Democrat Party during this election cycle. Stick around, okay? Thank you. Okay, in July 13th of this year, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was shot at a rally in a farmer's field. And CNN, the Communist News Network, is even admitting that the Secret Service, which has become a tempo an absolute temple to wokeism and DEI, failed to actually take charge and protect the president. But that's just the beginning. From the very birth of the agency that is specifically dedicated to protecting the leadership of the free world, no Republican president has actually been protected. In fact, the record has been so bad that one would have to conclude that they are actually designed to set up assassinations of Republican presidents. Even Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent, says that the organization itself has been corrupted from the beginning of its conception. In fact, they are considered the source of the deep state narrative in America. Anyone that's been paying attention to politics at all for the last 8 years has seen that the Federal Bureau of Incompetence, the FBI, you know, the ones that are supposedly the premier law enforcement agency in America or even the world. Man, do I have reservations about that one. They seem to intentionally drop the ball when it comes to investigating deep state operatives that happen to toe the party line on the Democrat side. In short, they are basically nothing more than a cash cow for corrupt politicians to line their pockets, because they are probably the best funded organization in the world, and they serve no purpose. Literally no purpose. They have a SWAT team known as HRT, the Hostage Recovery Team. Okay? And yet, everybody knows that the hostage recoveries that happen in America have nothing to do with the FBI. Absolutely nothing. In many cases, hostage recovery is handed over to Delta Force. In most cases, it's handed over to an organization within the Marshal Service called the Regulators. The Hostage Recovery Team, the only redeeming quality of the FBI, is yet just another tool to intimidate law-abiding citizens into handing over their neighbors to our increasingly communist federal government. Don't allow this to happen. Don't be intimidated by the bayonets that are hung on their belt, by their big guns and bad attitudes. they bleed like everybody else. So make them bleed. We are beyond the point of civilized talk in American politics. The weaponization of the court system against a political opponent has proven this throughout the last 5 years of the Biden and, well, the end of Trump's administration and the beginning of Biden's administration on to today. It has proven that there is absolutely no credibility to the federal justice system at all. So don't buy into it. When somebody says that Trump's a felon, I flat out laugh at them and say, yeah, and I would be too. Because we think the same way. And because I'm not willing to toe the party line, I'm expecting to be shot against a brick wall too. And I'm sure many others are as well. Because that's where we are in America right now. It can change. Dan Bongino is still hopeful that we could change it with an election. Most of us don't believe that. I believe an increasing number of people are actually suspicious of the whole electoral system, as they should be, because it became obvious that the stale tampon that happens to be running for president with a pedophile, by the way, has absolutely no ability to run. She's going to be installed by the sheer fact that she happens to be a DEI pick that checked all the boxes. She has no brain and no desire to actually serve the people. She got to where she's at by virtue of a blowjob, and that's all there is to it. Also, and I've seen it myself, 2 weeks before Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service came to my front door. My dad let him into the living room because they wanted to talk to me. Apparently, free speech is now a crime. That's right. Free speech is now a crime. You see, when somebody doesn't like what you happen to be saying, they start saying that it's instigating violence. Words don't instigate violence, because human beings have free will. And if you do not believe that human beings have free will, you must be a Democrat that believes in slavery. Part of the reason that the whole black slavery narrative never worked for me is because 100% of the world, its population, at one point or another has been enslaved. Okay? 100%. And yet, the African American is the only population that hasn't gotten over their slavery and is still playing the victim. Why? Because the Democrat Party and the mainstream media has pushed racism in America to the point that they still feel like victims. The few people that actually have gotten past the narrative of slavery in America have thrived. Candace Owens, Booker T. Washington, Martin Luther King, Spike Lee, James Earl Jones. The list goes on. And there's nothing in their personalities that say that we are still slaves. And yet the federal government, because even when we're in a Republican administration, is still pushing the narrative because they know that the Democrat Party is going to take over again sooner or later, and they need those votes. You want to talk about systemic racism? Let's talk about the projects that Lyndon Baster Johnson started with a new society. And as he passed that bill, he famously said, if we pass this bill, we will have these niggers voting for us for the past or for the next 200 years. That bill has that bill has ingrained an entire population, an entire subculture of America into believing that we don't need dad to be in the household because mom needs the welfare check. We don't need dad around because we need a roof over our head, and if dad was around, we would probably lose our home. Any other population would be looking at if we're going to lose our home, we need to figure out ways to bring in more money, not ways to be coddled by the government. I'm going to get plenty of really bad comments about this particular video because it's sounding racist or how could you be so cold? It's a simple Google search. Do your research. Read Dinesh D'Souza's The Big Lie, or Stealing America, or Hillary's America. And understand that the reason the Democrat Party is so prolifically black on the surface is because basically they buy the votes with welfare money. Welfare money that is structured so the people that are receiving it can never actually get ahead far enough to get off of welfare. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, because they need the Democrats to stay in power in order to receive that next check, in order to keep a roof over their kids' heads. If that isn't racist, what the hell is? Alright, guys. I am glad to actually have the viewership that I do, and I'm enjoying making these videos, but sometimes they get a little bit intense. The reality is that we're in a soft civil war right now against the most evil people on the planet. People call Republicans Nazis, but just maybe you need to actually read a history book and realize that the party of the American Ku Klux Klan never changed their ideology. They never even considered changing their ideology. In fact, they bred bigotry and hate even into their serfs, the African American, to the point that myself, a lowly security guard, is being called a white nigger piece of shit for doing my job. That's who these people are. The ideology didn't change. It just went from hating the African American to hating all things white. And they count on the fact that the people that are members of the party are either being indoctrinated by their schools, so they're not really educated, they're just indoctrinated and towing the line, or they are absolutely ignorant, completely uneducated, intentionally uneducated, and forced onto welfare because of the fact that our economy, industry, and our basic standards of living have surpassed the ability to just read a book and figure out what your job is. Now you actually have to be able to think for yourself, something that somebody that went to a public school never learned. Now you actually have to be able to problem solve why a machine is not working the way it is, and continue to do whatever your job is, even though that machine is running too hot, until it cools down. This is something that is completely above what the current education system is allowing people to learn. When people are going to college, not able to cite what the actual clause is of the First Amendment that people call the separation of the church and state clause, because they've never actually read the Constitution. You know the system's broken. I mean, how hard is it to remember Congress shall make no law regarding institutions of religion? But no. If people heard that, they would start realizing, oh, it's not actually the church that needs to stay out of government. It's government that needs to stay out of the church. And that's a scary prospect for a Democrat. Because if they actually kept a religion in the government, Democrats would not be allowed to exist. The ideology would not be allowed to exist. Industry would not be murdering children in these kill factories known as Planned Parenthood at the volume that they do. And they might even abolish Planned Parenthood. So it's a terrifying prospect for a Democrat. Because their entire campaign, consistently in recent years, has been built on the right to choose whether or not you're going to murder your child or actually be abstinent until marriage. And they can't do that. I mean, after all, these women are whores. That's what they do for a living. They go from one guy to another and milk them for all they got. That's why Slavic men, from basically the time that they are given their first gun, are told to stay away from these prostitutes. And their fathers don't call them women. They don't call them American women. They refer to them specifically as prostitutes. Okay, guys. That's what I got for today. In the upper corner, there's a QR code that leads to a gateway to donate. Please use it if you have the means. But until next time, live free, die well, and love your neighbor as Christ loved you.